He was a morbidly obese surgeon destined for an operating table and an early death. Now he's a rebel MD who is fabulously fit and fighting to make America healthy again. This is Stay Off My Operating Table with Dr. Philip Ovadia.
Folks, we're going to take a pause from talking about conspiracy theories as they relate to mobile phones and the internet tech titans and talk about what you probably tuned into this show for: metabolic health. This is Stay Off My Operating Table with Dr. Philip Ovadia, and we are joined today by Sally K. Norton, who apparently has miles per hour after her name, but she corrected me when I said miles per hour.
Most perfect human.
Most perfect human.
I like that one.
Since nobody knows what a master's in public health is, yeah.
Oh, there we go. Phil, I did a little research on Sally and her book, and I meet this particular episode with a mixture of anxiety and excitement, mostly because let's find out about Sally and this particular topic, which is going to piss some people off and make other people excited and hopefully settle my anxiety.
Awesome. That's a lot of what we do here. I thought what you were going to say to me was, Phil, what the hell took you so long to get her on? We've been doing this for 250 episodes. How have we not had Sally on before? It was a question I was kind of asking myself, but whatever the forces are that we finally got to meet in person a few months ago at one of the events. But I've certainly been aware of Sally's work for a long time. It has helped shape a lot of what, how I view the world of nutrition and what we talk about. And I am excited to finally have her on. I guess to start with, Sally, if there's anyone in the audience who's not familiar with you, which may be hard to believe, but give a little bit of your background, introduction, tell us what the letters are from and how you got into talking about toxic superfoods.
It's an ugly journey to get to toxic superfoods. But it started off innocently enough. I think very early in life, I was interested in eating well because I had a lot of little strep infections and things like that. And they were spooning this liquid penicillin into my poor baby gullet. This stuff, you're too young to know how bad this stuff tastes. But I was barred from the swimming pool quite a bit. And by the time I was 5, they ripped out my tonsils, which was traumatic. So I was quite aware that if you don't feel well, you don't get fun in life. And I really wanted to find a way to have more fun and be productive, and realized in 7th grade that nutrition would be a way to help people avoid chronic diseases. The big ones that we were worrying about in 77 or whenever I decided that was cancer and heart disease, right? We got to stop cancer and heart disease. And so I've been on this quest for how to live healthy and avoid unhappy things like ear infections and heart disease forever, but I was sick the whole time, including foot pain problems that caused me to drop out of Cornell, where I got my nutrition degree, for foot surgery that didn't really work that well. And then I did eventually finish that degree and went on to get that MPH at UNC Chapel Hill in public health. Initially thinking I would continue on in nutrition, but went for public health leadership because at the time I thought, who needs more biochemistry when it's all behavioral? Like, people just don't know what to eat and aren't doing what they're supposed to do. So how do we shape people's behavior? But it turns out there's a whole lot in nutrition and public health that's just missing the boat in a biochemical way. Like
Say that clearly, not merely missing the boat. What is it?
For one thing, we're blaming the victims, and all of public health has helped to create a situation where we have a worldwide obesity epidemic. We have a diabetes problem. We serve candy as a snack and as an entree at conferences. Like, our whole food culture has not been helped in public health, and the public health has fallen apart really since we got really tight about fat and restricting animal fats. We got into corn oil, margarine, and low-fat snack wells and all this stuff. And since then, people have been given permission to go buy commercial foods because the label says low fat. And we've really lost literacy around food and nutrition. And we've lost literacy generally about science and biology. And I think we've really set ourselves up to be the victim of commercial forces that have now affected medical protocols. So the doctors are now in a state of ignorance because it's big financial interests that are shaping how we practice medicine.
I'm laughing because I know this is probably news to a lot of people, but good God, we hear this over and over and over. So I shouldn't interrupt. Carry on, please.
Anyway, I ended up leaving academia. My career was in academia. I helped to run, I was the project manager on a large NIH grant trying to integrate holistic and lifestyle understanding, vocabulary, language into health professions education in the medical school, the dental school, the nursing school, even the pharmacy school, and so on. And we didn't get very far because by then, that was 2000 when we got really going with that. The whole system was already captured and we weren't going to change the curriculum. I sat on the curriculum committee in the medical school and was there because that's how the university justified taking NIH money. But it's not, I wasn't there because we were going to change and create literacy among clinicians for how to talk to a patient that says, now that I have cancer, can I take these supplements? Can I eat this? Can I do that? And get some advice about lifestyle. They don't have the time and energy in the oncology department, et cetera, to give that advice. And they don't even have the budget to have a full-time dietitian in the department. However, the 5 CEOs are making well over $500,000 a year and spending a fortune on devices for surgery they don't even need. They could just buy a few sterilizable stainless steel instead of buy 6,000 plastic versions of things. It was just sad to be inside medical school and be inside the belly of affecting curriculum and not being able to bring a broader awareness because it's too late, because we've really I think, and as I argue in my book, when we started getting federal funding guaranteeing that medical people would make money regardless of who you're serving, then that's when the commercial forces took over the delivery of healthcare. And it's just like fungal hyphae have really embedded our whole brains.
Yeah, that's something kind of, I guess, triggered by what you said. There's really two problems, I guess, when you think about, doctors not knowing how to talk about nutrition and supplements, right? Number one is doctors recognizing that has an impact on health, which is still something I would say is probably the minority opinion among doctors. And then number two, if you are going to talk about it, what's the correct information, right? Because the predominant information that has been out there for a long time, as you talk about in the book, and as we've talked about many times, is probably the wrong information. We finally maybe are making some headway, right? We just had this monumentous event where they literally flipped the food pyramid upside down, sort of in partial recognition of this. But how do you think about those two challenges, right? Because on the one hand, you might say, it might not actually be beneficial to have doctors talking about nutrition because the little they learned about it is information that's largely making the problem worse.
And that's true in public health, and I approached some of my public health colleagues as I was gathering my information. It was just striking that in public health nutrition messaging, we insist on dark leafy greens, and that's being translated into chard and spinach is something you need to do a few times a week, when in fact, those are the most toxic high oxalate greens, and they have lots of problems to be considered something you need to be healthy, and that we need to regroup in public health and in our prevention messages and re-examine that. But literally no one wanted to talk to me about it. I can't even start a conversation and sharing the data, sharing the literature. I've pulled up tens of thousands of articles. I've been studying it like a scholar would because I left academia, which gave me time to be a scholar unpaid.
Okay.
Yeah, let's jump in there because, so you mentioned these things, oxalates, and I can tell you that, and, I may not remember everything from medical school, but I don't think I ever heard that term during medical school. I don't think I ever heard that term in 20 years as being a heart surgeon. I think I only really heard that term probably when I came across you for the first time or someone talking about you, that I became aware of what this is and why it might be a problem. But let's start with the basics. What are oxalates and why do you think that they are one of the problematic aspects of some of these, as you call it, superfoods that end up being toxic?
Yeah, so oxalates is so interesting that we are so uninformed about it. The word wasn't really in our vocabulary, even in medicine, and almost all my clients tell me their doctors don't know the term. I've had, doctors be sick on it and found my work, and they've written, online reviews and things and come to me. So yeah, we really don't know about it, and yet we've used oxalic acid, which is the parent compound. Oxalic acid is this ionizing compound, meaning it breaks up like salt does. Salt with sodium chloride, it breaks up in water and dissolves. So oxalic acid is this charged ion that's made by plants and funguses, and it's a sort of a decay product of oxidation. Vitamin C turns into oxalic acid and so on. That's how plants make it. So plants deliberately produce oxalic acid and turn it into calcium oxalate crystals, which is a calcium oxalate crystal is the main ingredient in almost all kidney stones. Crystallizes easily and under different conditions. So the plants deliberately use it for lots of mechanisms that they need as plants, including storing calcium. Also building very specific shapes of these crystals because they have certain functions. Some of them are self-defense functions. So when we eat plant foods that are high in oxalate, which are right now weirdly popular, peanuts and all the nuts like almonds, almond milk, that kind of thing, 3 dark leafy greens, which is beet greens, chard, and spinach, sorrel too, but that's not real popular these days, especially in the US. And then there's kiwi and dark raspberries, blackberries, that kind of thing are high in oxalate. They're real popular foods. Beets, sweet potatoes, dark chocolate, and then a lot of the beans, the black beans, the white beans that we make Boston baked beans with. So this looks like a classic, sort of classic American dish. But as I mentioned in my book, the idea of using beans as a primary protein came about from the elites back when nutrition was first becoming a science where we were trying to find out how many macronutrients, macro meaning the carbs, the fat, and the protein, the ones that deliver us calories that we need in fair amounts just to keep things running as fuel. As we were trying to figure that out, protein, we can see that there's amino acids in plants. And so the elites started teaching the poor people, nah, you don't want all that steak and stuff that's so good and natural and normal for you. You want to start making succotash and these things so you can survive on your crappy wages, your six-day jobs, the 12 hours, 6 days a week with, that kind of life that we had at the turn of the last century. So there's a whole history of moving us away from the more hunter kind of diet that we had and the more self-sufficiency diet towards newer ideas of food. And so oxalate is more in these modern contemporary foods. People don't recognize how contemporary things are, like the use of dark chocolate or peanut butter, which often come together either in a candy or in a snack. Peanut butter was an invented food to help bring the Southern economy back after the Civil War. We were still struggling with the Southern economy after the Civil War, and peanut butter was initially kind of invented by Harvey Kellogg, who ran his sanitarium in Michigan and was putting everybody on vegan diets because he knew from his upbringing that masturbation was sending people to hell. So if they didn't eat meat, they wouldn't masturbate and their souls would be saved. So he's busy saving souls with peanut butter. And then we invented it as a commercial food along with cornflakes and other wonderful things that helped come out of that era. And it just became normalized as we're all like now going to work all the time in factories, and it became worse with women going to work. So no one's home in the kitchen, and we're all relying on more and more reliance on coupons and commercial products and not really noticing how much we've changed our diet. Peanut butter peanuts were raised for pigs. It's pig food, but now it's baby food, and pediatricians are recommending young parents to give the first food includes a scoop of peanut butter every day. This is a novel idea. It hasn't been tested with randomized controlled trials, but we're allowed to do it anyway because, hey, we have an MD degree and there's a peanut allergy out there and kids are in trouble with peanut allergies. So therefore, put a fake solution on a fake problem on a false way of eating And you just twist yourself into this place where we're starting to make mistakes that we just think are normal. And so we've normalized some things that just aren't normal for the human physiology by eating foods like the peanuts and the almonds and the Swiss chard and the spinach year round, and overloading ourselves with oxalic acid and oxalate crystals in our diets. So the oxalic acid part, you get both when you eat plants. That goes into the bloodstream very easily, starting in the stomach, maybe even in the mouth, because it just slides between cells. It doesn't need a transport. It does, there is a reverse transport to try to get it out because the body doesn't want it in. So healthy cells in the colon have transport to try to, as it's coming in, kind of like scooping out a sinking boat, try to get some of it out. But that function is still not fully understood, how it works, when it works, who it works for, and why, and what the genetic differences are, what the terrain differences are, and so on. But the truth is, you can absorb way too much after a meal that has things like peanut butter or chocolate or spinach or Swiss chard, or these green smoothies, is delivering a fairly toxic level of oxalate. One study, for example, a spinach smoothie that had fruit and spinach in it, delivering 700 milligrams of oxalate, caused the circulating blood white cells, the monocytes, to now be incapable of fighting infection in over 70% of the 40 volunteers who drank that one spinach smoothie.
Run that by me again.
like right away, in under an hour, you've wrecked your immunity for a little while because the circulating immune cells. And now you got to get more ones like built by your bone marrow. But guess where, when you start eating this at that level, like a smoothie, then you're kind of exceeding your kidney's ability to excrete it because it's probably about 8 times what you're built to excrete. So this is water soluble. It's an ion, so it floats in the water. It comes out through urine. That's the kidney's job to clean it out of the blood. And the kidneys are designed to handle maybe 150 milligrams a day, but your standard spinach smoothie is between 700 and 1,000 milligrams. So that's way more.
Wow.
That
Yeah,
level,
wow, indeed.
that's called uremic. They call that uremic when you have too much toxin in your bloodstream that your kidneys can't quite get out fast enough. And it's also the level of this genetic disease called primary hyperoxaluria. So we have evidence from those patients that have some kind of renal failure or have this primary hyperoxaluria. That means genetically, primary, there's a genetic defect that causes oxalate to be high in the body because the liver produces a little oxalate. And when you have this genetic defect, it's actually 250 types of defects that result in the same problem where the liver is putting out oxalate. So even though it's a toxin, the liver doesn't get rid of oxalate at all. It makes it. Right? So people confuse about, oh, if you just have a good liver, no. This comes to the liver immediately after it starts messing with your white blood cells and the vascular lining. It goes straight to the liver through that hepatic circulation and fills those sinusoidal cells with oxalate itself. So the liver is required to use its glutathione to protect its own tissue. And you can really deplete the liver of its detox capacity because it's so busy trying to not die on too much oxalate. Yeah.
Phil, as a
So,
non-medical person, I'm horrified. Is that because I don't really understand what she's saying?
no, believe me, I understand. I've learned it from Sally's work and it horrifies me as well. My big, I guess, Sally, what was sort of your aha moment that you realized, what a problem this is? Because, you're still one of the few people talking about it. And as far as I know, you were the first person to really start talking about it. So what led you to this conclusion that, these oxalates are such a problem?
I had to go, scrape myself along the path of hell and had to dig myself out of it. And it's really a sad story of having arthritis as a 12-year-old and then being a vegan in my 20s and having severe arthritis and then having this foot problem and needing surgery and then having bad feet for 30 years. And it just went on and on. Very bad fatigue. Eventually, I left my last academic job bleeding to death with fibroids, needing a hysterectomy and unable to sit a full day and having to write grants on my kneecaps. And after that surgery, I did not recover well. I was on the sofa, and my endocrinologist said, "Your numbers look good. You look great. I'm sending you to my sleep doctor," because that's what he does when he doesn't know what to do with people. And that revealed severe problems with my neurobiology of my brain. It was waking up 29 times every hour. The brain couldn't stay settled down. The nervous system was so toxic, it couldn't stay settled down. And I was so tired. I had no idea I wasn't sleeping because I was kind of living in a semi-coma of just being exhausted and unable to function. So I went on a 3-year odyssey. And luckily, prior to that, a few years, like 3 or 4 years prior to that, I had an attack of genital pain. Short, brief, few-day attack. And that can be so awful that nothing else life matters except getting rid of that. And luckily, a Google search by my husband revealed there's a thing called a vulvar pain foundation. And this woman, Joanne, like 32 years ago or something like that, founded the vulvar pain, the VP Foundation, to help all people with genital pain recognize that oxalate in the diet, or getting rid of oxalate in the diet, can be the solution. So I didn't understand her stuff because it wasn't like mechanistic enough for my little logic brain. Because she's not a clinician or not an academic like I am. She's like a regular human being. And so I wasn't fully convinced, but her mission, she deserves all the credit, not me, because her membership and she collected money amongst themselves to get foods tested. Because the sad thing is that in public health and in medical care, we know that oxalate is a kidney stone problem, and we know that it's a kidney wrecker. So it used to be that we would put patients on oxalate controlled diets and tell them to quit eating spinach. But in fact, what we know in dietetics and medicine, we don't know much about where the oxalates are in food. So we've never been able to teach a low or zero oxalate diet. And it never occurred to anybody, just cut out the plants and do this carnivore thing, which is now what's around not in a mainstream way yet, but no one in the kidney research ever thought that there's any way to do a really low to zero oxalate diet. So they've never actually studied it because they've never known how to do it, because they've never even cared how much oxalate is in food. And the lists you see in the textbooks are wrong. There'll be like 30 foods listed, and there'll be 8 or 9 things there shouldn't be on the list of high oxalate. Like, it's just wrong. So they haven't bothered. It's so surprising. All my innocence about nutrition and public health and being a professional and being from Cornell and in the system is just heartbreaking. Like, we don't know what we're talking about. So Joanne, the hero who went through the stuff they do to women who have this problem, they will laser off the surface of the vulva. They will cut out the glands in the vagina. They will do medieval things to you rather than talk to you about your diet, or even imagine that there's some lifestyle thing that certain people need, whatever. So she got me aware of oxalates. And during this time, when I was trying to figure out the sleep problem, I was trying to fix my chronic bloating and belching and constipation because I thought endotoxemia was why my brain wasn't working. So I tried the only thing I hadn't tried, and that's eating 2 kiwi every day. Well, kiwi is really high in oxalate, especially those defensive arrows, these like toothpicks that the plants make. Super bad. And that's why it works for constipation, because it's a gut irritant. It's these little glass toothpicks, and you eat them with kiwi, and it helps you, get rid of stuff. Okay, out, it's gotta go. So that brought back my arthritis and made me turn 80 fast again. And when I was younger and doing vegan, I felt like I was 80, and that was happening. I could see in my hot yoga class, I was getting worse and worse by the week while doing this kiwi. And suddenly it was dawning on me, as I couldn't fall asleep all over again, that the kiwi was the arthritis, which had been this old problem. And I'm like, oxalate was why I had arthritis? I was like livid because I have to fix the sleep problem. But now, and so stupid me, I go ahead and really go for a low oxalate again. I had done it in 2009. This is 2013. And lo and behold, in a couple days, I'm sleeping better. The arthritis is going away. I can read again. I mean, I couldn't read the mail. Oh, wait, I thought oxalate was kidney stones, but I thought it was vulva pain. No, wait, it's sleep. Oh, it's ours. Oh, it's freaking ruining your body is what it's doing. And I'm like, it's just me. I'm one of those weird people. It's just some of us have an
Right.
oxalate thing. I'm not as tolerant to oxalate for I got a lemon because I've been living this lemon body because I've been eating wrong my whole life. So I assumed it was rare. But I knew there was a me out there. I knew there was plenty of other me's who needed to hear this message because I knew how much we're embracing the foods I was eating, which was chard and sweet potatoes. Those are great foods for everyone. That's what we say over and over again. They're so great, you should make them your friends every day, which I had done.
Yeah.
And so I thought this is such an important topic and it's such a whole new thing that I needed A, to understand it because I need to know, and B, be willing to warn other people, hey, if you want to just be a little cautious, you ought to know about this. And what I have found to my great surprise is that I think oxalate is basically messing with humanity, period. It's not just me.
It's
Is
it's
there,
it's not a particular kind of person. It's if you're Homo sapiens, it's
You
a
ought to know. Yeah. Now, there are a lot of things that make us more vulnerable to oxalates, including early exposure. I think my mom was eating that rhubarb I was growing up on, a classic high oxalate food, probably was exposed in utero. But when you have an early childhood like I did of getting antibiotics early, I think that group is much more likely to have sensitivities or even be more prone to wanting to eat this way. I mean, it could be the other piece of that is those of us who are sick as kids are more likely to eat our vegetables because, I don't know. There's all kinds of questions that we could ask research wise. I could get a whole giant institution if we had the money to do it. We got lots of questions we could be researching, but nobody seems to want to. Even though there's hundreds upon hundreds and hundreds of articles saying that oxalate injures vascular tissue, impairs vessel repair, that creates inflammation in blood vessels and in the heart, causes abnormal calcifications of all kinds, damage the genetic expression of cells and turns them into bone cells and create calcifications of any kind of tissue, causes heart conduction problems. So you get AFibs and you get heart block and you get some nasty stuff. That's fundamental. That there's vasculitis that's happening, and it's basically clotting problems where you're likely to bleed out more. So you're much more likely to have a stroke, much more likely to have all kinds of blood vessel things that can make you blind or just cause you need capillaries. And if you're abusing them with high oxalates after every meal, that can't be good. This is the most delicate tissue you can imagine, capillary beds, and so critical to everything. And yet no one's asked the question, how does a high oxalate meal done every day affect your capillary health over time?
yeah, yeah, is all I can say. You mentioned earlier, so you said, I want to make sure we get this right, that plants make oxalate or oxalic acid from vitamin C.
That seems to
And
be a primary mechanism in the botany
okay,
literature.
so humans are one of the few animals that can't make vitamin C. We can't synthesize vitamin C, and therefore it's considered essential in the diet. Do you think there's a relationship there between the fact that we can't make vitamin C and we can't tolerate oxalates?
That's a very interesting question that no one's asked me, and I haven't thought that much about. But I think controlling, keeping, overdoing vitamin C is a terrible idea. Right. And
Yeah.
so the body realizes, probably when you're eating foods like freshly killed meat that has some little vitamin C in it, but no carbs, you can get by with minimal amounts of vitamin C. A healthy body recycles vitamin C and tries to hold on to it and keep reusing it. And then when you start in the carby time of year and you're eating a lot more fresh carbs, which are loaded with vitamin C mostly. I mean, still vitamin C is still not in droves in food, like lemons and citrus and red peppers and lettuce all have plenty of vitamin C. But yeah, I mean, I think you don't really want to be producing vitamin C if you can help it because it naturally degenerates into oxalate. It can just oxidize. There's also an enzymatic pathway as well where it ends up as oxalate From what I've read in the literature, even the vitamin C sitting in your capsule or your tablet or in your supplement can degenerate in the container. So you can be consuming some oxalic acid that came from that vitamin C. And this is, I think, the sneakiest way to ruin your brain is to take vitamin C supplements. The brain cells and other tissues pick it up. And it's when the C is already inside the cell that it can degenerate into oxalate right there. That's a sneaky way to sneak oxalate inside of cells. I was given vitamin C IVs and ended up breaking a needle. An IV needle snapped in two because this is maybe the 12th one or so. And each time my vessels became harder and harder to stick. They were getting fibrotic. They were becoming ropey and rolly and just like fussy. Mine are big and easy to stick. But the more vitamin C I got, the more my veins became fibrotic, meaning tough and grizzly and they just didn't want to. So this woman, Mary, who was the IV nurse at this clinic, a friend of mine was running, he said, I'll take care of you, Sally. You probably got mercury. I'll take care of you. And he's had me on vitamin C, etc. And that needle, she must have stuck me in the same favorite place she had. She stuck me in a crystal that was fibrotic, that it didn't move out of the way. So that crystal, harder than glass, managed to snap her IV needle into. But then once I got off the vitamin C and all that junk, my veins are fine. You can stab them. But for a while, I kept telling phlebotomists, hey, watch, my veins will roll. They're kind of hard to stick. And then they stopped being hard to stick. I'm like, wait a minute, that just reversed itself. But you don't want fibrosis. You don't want scar tissue, damaged vessels. And that's what vitamin C IV can do.
Yeah, I mean, this is fairly interesting to think about from a heart surgery perspective. You know, if we go back to the work of Linus Pauling, who theorized that much of heart disease was vitamin C deficiency, and he, advocated for giving a lot of vitamin C to help heal the blood vessels. And then you hear this part of it and you say, maybe that works in a low oxalate environment. But when you start introducing oxalates, which, like you said, are kind of ubiquitous in our healthy food environment, maybe, that's where that approach can break down. But
I'm not sure that he got around to doing like trials with human beings, and certainly not IV delivered.
Yeah.
So we do have studies that show that even orally given vitamin C will cause problems, including a lag time of oxalate coming out. Like you can see vitamin C causing more oxalate in the urine, but much more so after a week or so after you discontinue the vitamin C supplementation, the oxalate levels in the urine go way up, which is a very important piece of evidence, along with many others, that shows that the body will hold on to the oxalate in the body until the kidneys are ready to handle it again, until, the vascular system and the kidneys need to be capable. Otherwise, the cells will kind of sequester and hold on to that, not because they want to, but because they have to for the good of all. Because if the heart or vascular system or kidneys aren't happy, nobody's happy.
Okay,
So
let's talk nutrition. This is particularly interesting to me because I recently discovered that I seem to be chronically low in calcium and magnesium. So I went to Dr. Google, who is clearly trustworthy in all things medical, and I asked him, what's the best way to help me with chronic shortages of magnesium and calcium? And he prescribed, described, whatever it was he did, almonds, spinach, and
Oh my gosh.
I want to say kale, but it might not have been kale, but it definitely almonds, spinach, and a third dark green leafy vegetable.
Wow. Dr. Google hasn't been reading the literature.
Aside from me being stupid for asking Dr. Google about that, I'm interested in the nutritional cost versus benefit of dropping this stuff from your diet. Does my question make sense?
Yeah. Oh, because this is the argument that you hear in medicine all the time. Oh, you don't want anybody on a low oxalate diet. They're going to miss all those important nutrients in those special foods. The literature was very clear By 1935, we already knew that giving spinach to babies depletes them of calcium and will cause severe calcium deficiency disorders and growth problems in human children. This is human trials. We already knew there's no available calcium in spinach. We already knew that. And it's been repeated about every 20 years. We come back around to that. And yet, there's a concept in nutrition sometimes called bioavailability. So that's the ability of a nutrient in question to get from inside the food, where you can measure it in a lab chemically, to your cells and be useful.
Right.
There's a big giant gap there that no one has bothered to fill for the last 50 years. We've been talking about caring about bioavailability in nutrition, and nobody's bothered to do it. And now everything's just run away Wild West on the internet. You can say whatever you feel like saying. And we're still pretending that these things deliver minerals. Now, what the literature was showing in the 30s is that kale, collards, turnip greens especially, they're even lower in oxalate. Things like turnip greens will allow babies and baby rats to thrive, but spinach will ruin them. And like with the rat studies, now I did say there's human studies, but the more fun studies are the rat studies, where the rat mamas couldn't get pregnant, or the ones that did had stillbirths and had to eat the babies because she was so malnourished on a diet that was the regular rat food with spinach added. They were trying to add spinach to add a calcium supplement because in the 30s, they thought spinach had calcium in it. And when they used spinach to deliver calcium, it caused calcium malnutrition, infertility, and death in the rats. And in children, just complete calcium deficiency they could measure.
And then Popeye came along, right?
Yeah, the heroic plant comes along in a whole stream of moral thinking that goes back 400 years. And it was the preachers who were trying to, like, say with Kellogg, trying to keep you from touching your parts so you don't go to hell. You weren't supposed to eat meat because if you did, you'd beat your wife, you wouldn't give to church. You're just basically a bad guy, and that's why, like in monasteries, we do the vegetarian and almost vegan diet there so the men can stay celibate comfortably and lose their drive. Like when you deplete people of the nutrients they need, they lose the life force. And so that creative impulse, which is often expressed sexually, is taken away from them. And preachers, it was very big in the 1850s, right? Vegetarian
Yeah.
was big back then. The whole vegetarian society was founded by people like Amelia Bloomer and these fancy people. The woman who wrote Little Women, her dad was a big vegan. He tried to raise his kids on apples and bran, and his wife's teeth all fell out. And luckily, Emerson, the poet, would sneak the kids over for dinner a couple times a month to give them some protein. But, it's been around in the elite circles, like to put plants forward and eating meat somehow is less moral or something. And so I think the spinach thing with Popeye just really hit a nerve that was already ready to be fired on. And that cartoons have this way of hooking your mindset and getting you. And anything you learn when you're young, you don't want to undo because that unstabilizes your confidence in the world itself. You can't think that your kindergarten teacher was an idiot and your mom was too. That's just not comfortable. You just want to believe what you're raised on.
Kind of going to common beliefs that are just plain wrong. I can't tell you how many times I've heard from patients that, they have kidney stones and their doctor told them they need to stop eating meat because that's causing their kidney stones. Let's dig into that one a little bit.
I wish I could remember who wrote the study. I think it was Ross Holmes and his crowd. He just retired a couple years ago, and he's part of the Three Musketeers of kidney research and dietary oxalate research. And they showed very clearly that giving a high protein diet, if anything, helped the kidneys, didn't hurt them. And a high protein diet does seem to help organs recover. So there's no way that eating protein causes kidney stones because protein does not have oxalate in it. You have to have the ingredients to make a kidney stone. And the principal ingredient is oxalate. That's it. If without oxalate, you can't build the stone out of protein. You can't convert an amino acid into an oxalate. You can convert vitamin C in oxalate. You can convert, I have to take that back because hydroxyproline and maybe a couple others, but hydroxyproline is a connective tissue type amino acid that does to a small percent, 1 to 10% of it, depending on your metabolism, how deficient you are in B vitamins, how inflamed your liver is how the body makes what we call endogenous oxalate. That's how the liver creates oxalate, is either through the conversion of vitamin C or the conversion of hydroxyproline, which is one amino acid. That's why it was worth funding the study. So if you give people a lot of protein, does that hydroxyproline cause kidney stones? It does not. What feeding protein helps to heal kidneys. But that's only a handful of studies. And in the meantime, we've been thinking that protein must be the problem in medicine for a long time. And we've been repeating things that aren't true, like you're required to have uremic toxemia, or you're required to have kidney failure before oxalate backs up and accumulates in your system. They've been repeating that because it's just easier to be a broken record than actually look at the facts. When you write a research article, you're mentioning a lot of peripheral things like that and mentioning a lot of assumptions in the field, and you're just repeating them without actually examining them. So you can see it more often repeated in the literature, the wrong stuff. It's very hard to extract wrong thinking or wrong articles from the medical literature. So how do you know who's right or who's not right? And that's where you get this accusations of cherry picking and this and that. But it's only cherry picking if you're paying no attention to mechanisms. If you can see the basic literature showing the mechanisms, and you see out here in the life of human beings, you see the two reflecting each other, then you have some confidence in what you're talking about. But a lot of times we don't do that in academia.
Is there any, benefit, I guess, from oxalate? So you said the liver makes it, right? So that makes me think, okay, maybe this is like sugar, right? We need some sugar in our bodies to live, and the liver can make sugar, but getting too much sugar, becomes a problem quickly. Are oxalates sort of the same story? Is there some reason that we need this, such that the liver will make it?
The body does make several compounds that just really aren't that good to keep, and that's why you have kidneys. And that's why you defecate like that. You got to get rid of some stuff. That's just how it works. And some people have tried to ask that question in a serious way. And the only thing that's the least bit beneficial that they've found so far is that the tartar on your teeth that it forms, because the saliva glands concentrate oxalate. So if you have a lot of tartar on your teeth, you may be a person who has too much oxalate in your bloodstream, and it's being concentrated by 10 to 30 times the level in your bloodstream in your saliva, and it can form extra tartar. And that tartar may be taking a little calcium off your teeth or out of your saliva, but it's basically protecting your teeth with the coating of oxalate and calcium from additional decay if you have a problem of decay. The sad part is oxalate causes cavities. It causes dental decay. It causes problems with the bone health and problems with the enamel, problems with the dentition in general. So it's a pretty small benefit. It's like it doesn't really count. And the mouth is an interesting thing because a lot of people recognize, like in heart surgery, you can't have mouth infection and do surgery on a patient, right? So there's a connection there. We know oral health is an important sign of general overall health. If your jawbone is going away, if you have a lot of dental caries, you have root problems, or you have gum problems, that means your general health is probably compromised. And unfortunately, with oxalates, you eat that spinach or that kiwi, and you've got oxalic acid and crystals that cause microdental wear and wear down the enamel, because the crystals of oxalate in the food is much harder than dental enamel. Okay. Think quartz, like ground up quartz dust, only sharp. So then that's direct contact from food. Then it comes back around in the bloodstream at a real high peak between 2 and 5 hours after the meal. So the blood that's inside your teeth and in your gums and your jaw is high oxalate. Your saliva is now going high oxalate. So you're putting more oxalate back into your mouth with saliva. So it would be nice if dentists knew that high tartar might be a sign to say, ask somebody if they're really into almonds, almond milk, spinach salad, smoothies, beets, or Swiss chard, or
Basically the kings of the vegan diet.
Yeah. And they're like, right now, people are pushing chocolate as this going to save your heart. It's going to lower your blood pressure and make you live to 600, and it's going to be great. So go ahead and eat plenty of it, without recognizing that chocolate is when we do human studies on oxalate and oxalate handling and how much gets in your blood, how much comes out into your urine, when it comes out, what it's doing to your circulating blood cells, we don't always use a spinach smoothie. We usually use a hot cocoa or a piece of chocolate because it's real easy to get a volunteer and say, would you come into our lab and give us a little blood? We'll give you some chocolate and give us a little urine and we'll give you some chocolate. Would you do that for $20? Yeah, I'll come in for free chocolate. Like it's an easy way to do it because it's very soluble in that bioavailability. There's quite a bit of oxalic acid that gets easily into the bloodstream from chocolate. So we use it all the time. So we know this. But since we think oxalate is like only matters if you have kidney stones or renal failure, we're missing the mark and ignoring the fact that chocolate also has cadmium and lead contamination and other problems. We're just going to push a cute story that tastes good, benefits only mindset, and refuse to look at a bigger picture. Because who wants to be a bad news bear like me? You know, Philly, I'm the only person talking about because who else would be willing to only have bad news all the time?
We certainly appreciate it. You know, we've been talking about this now for quite a while. I think most of our audience, you know, might be reacting like Jack, and they're like, oh my God, we got to get all this stuff out of our system. I'm going to stop eating all the foods that Sally just mentioned. But there's this interesting phenomena that when people do that, sometimes they actually get a little worse. We should probably kind of talk about that.
So important because this is such a shock. This was a shock to me that we accumulate oxalate in our tissues and the tissues don't want to keep them there. So we have oxalate in our thyroid gland, our bones and bone marrow where your cells are born, in your jaw and your teeth and your eyes and your brain. Like it is there in the joints. That's why I had all this arthritis. Now that you're not, see what happens. This is so confusing to people. This makes no sense. So we really have to slow down and go, all right, so I ate it. I ate too much of it because I was raised on peanut butter, potatoes, and chocolate. And then I got all into health and I was eating sweet potatoes and nuts. So now what do? You got to know that you probably have it in your thyroid gland in your body. And that is not a pretty picture because there's excretion and secretion. So the cells have to get rid of it. And that process of the cells getting rid of it is difficult in itself and it involves inflammation and all this. So just the process of trying to get it out. What are you doing here? You are now, analogy wise, a toxic Superfund site. Your body is a Superfund site, right? And you need some hazmat workers to come along, and that's your immune cells, and you got to do hazmat work and blow up the pavement on the streets of your thyroid gland and your ears and your eyes or whatever, right? So it's a pretty rough deal. And what can happen is you can release oxalic acid back into the bloodstream so high that it messes with your calcium level. So you get what we call hypocalcemia, which messes with the pacemaker, which messes with lots of things. It's not always have symptoms, but a lot of people who suddenly drop in oxalate start having arrhythmias quite a bit. And some of them end up with hypertension spikes that are crazy, like pulses, hypertension, heart going bananas, and they end up in the emergency room. And it's because there's a potassium and calcium problem and the cells have lost control. And some of it is neuro in nature, because pacemaker is like a neuro tissue, right? Because neuro cells, they, especially in order to function, have to have micro control over these ions, these electrolytes, calcium being the main one, inside cells. They're doing in nanosecond waves, they're moving calcium around and potassium and running these charges down axons and doing cool things. But when you have oxalate on board, it just messes up cell regulation of calcium. And you get this brain that won't sleep, and you get this anxiety, and you get fluttering heart, and you get muscle spasms and hiccups, and all kinds of crazy things start happening when you lose control of calcium. So the more you're moving oxalic acid around, the more you're setting yourself up for neuroinflammation attacks, which can feel like mood disorders or heart thing or this or that. So it's better to kind of try to do it in a way where all the stuff that's clinging in your tissues is kind of staying there quiet. We really don't want to stir up a big mess. Sometimes I talk about how it's like you've got the baby sleeping in the room and you want to just tiptoe out, shut the door quietly, and not disturb anything. Try to have that peace and calm, which means you don't want to go zero oxalate because the less, if there's a sudden change from like you're eating almond milk every day and sweet potatoes, and then you stop it and there's no more coming in from the diet, the vascular system or whoever's, we don't know who's reading what tissues. Is it the liver? Is it the vascular walls? Because the whole endothelium that lines all the blood vessels is an intelligent sensing being. It's an organ. And just like the mouth, nose, and throat and so on can sense food and the gut can, the nervous system and the endothelial lining of the vascular system is somehow managing oxalate and signaling. And it's got to be cool, yet nobody's really studying it. But we know from practical experience with thousands and thousands of people that actually keeping a little cup of hot cocoa in your diet might help you to avoid this excessive clearing. Now, hopefully you're doing clearing quietly behind the scenes and you don't have symptoms. But if you do too much at once through like a whole body chemistry, the immune system turns on chemistries, these cytokines that communicate all over the place and can get everybody a little too active. It's just like too much inflammation. We don't want a big dump of this stuff out of the tissues into your bloodstream and so on. So the cool thing is that you can back off of your too much spinach or too much almond flour or whatever is going on with your particular situation kind of gradually, and that's better. So you can remove one food at a time. Like everybody can live without Swiss chard. I promise you that life without Swiss chard is worth living.
Oh, you know what? It was Swiss chard. That's what it was.
Yeah, chard.
Mom
That's
used to grow Swiss chard in our garden. That may be
yes.
why I thought that was why I hated it, but I hated it because it was bad for me.
Why you hated it. My dad taught me to put vinegar on the beet greens and chard and love it. Like he grew up on it. And my mom taught me to grow it in my garden when I started gardening as a 9-year-old because spinach is not a cut and come. It's you just cut some off the chard plant and it keeps producing all summer long. And it's a very attractive plant. So I got into greens as a kid and that's a thing that people did. And we had rhubarb and all these things. But honestly, I was eating chard because it's good for you. And once you realize you don't have to bother, it's kind of okay. You can do it. You can do it. Yeah. And this whole thing ultimately is so much easier. Most of my clients are like, man, I was giving up milk. I didn't need to do that. I was giving up gluten. I didn't need to do that. I just need to give up my spinach and my almonds. And this is great. It's really not that hard for some people, but I have run into people who are like, take away my spinach. They're really like,
Yeah.
they're so into it. So depending on,
I contend that nobody really likes this stuff. I don't really believe people like dark green vegetables, leafy vegetables. I just
we're
believe
not rabbits.
believe we've been told for so long that they're good for us that some people are able to convince themselves that they like it.
All food is a learned behavior. Alcohol doesn't taste good, but
Oh, I beg to differ.
see, like human beings have to be taught what to eat. I mean, even dogs are dumb. They'll eat dumb, rotten leaves over their own food,
Yeah.
Like, but really, human beings, if you look at the cultures, like you wouldn't easily transition to a Japanese diet right away and say, oh, this is awesome. I've always wanted to eat like that. No, raw eggs are not your thing because you didn't grow up there. Like it's really a learned behavior. And we are teaching ourselves to eat so high oxalate right now that some people emotionally are so attached to it because it's just reinforced from everywhere. And it took me years of digging in the literature and working with human beings to realize how serious this is. And I'm telling you, this is a big concern. People come to me a lifetime of anxiety, gone, trauma, gone, ability to cope, get over PTSD, so much easier. Remembering old traumas like early molestation and things that comes up with the oxalate, and then they're clearing it and they're growing. Like just the neurotoxicity alone is good enough reason because it's your development as a child, your ability to follow directions and to learn to tie your shoes. If you're poisoned with oxalate, that's harder. Your ability to figure out if you actually asked for help or not as a child, like you could get frustrated as a child and become one of these sort of difficult children. A difficult
Yeah.
child is a malnourished toxic kid, period. kids are meant to be easy, but we don't feed them. And to me, in public health, it's the vulnerable that we most want to worry about. And the fetuses and the babies and the newly solid fooders who are being spooned peanut butter and so on. The new baby foods are very high in these high oxalate foods, things like quinoa and things like that. It's a big concern because I see out here when I work with the 30-year-olds and the 40-year-olds and the 50-year-olds, how much pain and suffering we're having unnecessarily because no one knew this when we were kids. So it's a big deal. It's really surprising. Little old me landed on this topic, but I think there's no bigger news in nutrition than this.
Yeah, no, it is huge, and I definitely encourage everyone to go get the book. Sally gives great, goes into all this, gives the protocols, helps you really understand what to do. So the book is Toxic Superfoods. Sally, where else can people learn more about what you do, learn about working with you, if this is a big issue for them?
I hope everyone's interested in learning more because this is a hard one to learn. It needs lots of repetition to even start making sense out of it. There's a lot of free information on my website, which is sallyknorton.com. You can download some free documents. If you want more information about oxalate, then you might want to get the data companion, which is only available on my website. This is a extensive table of actual good data, unlike what you're going to get in a nursing textbook that's color-coded to give you a sense. And it explains about data issues and why data is or isn't reliable and so on, and teaches a lot there. And come to one of my group classes. I've got one coming up most weeks. I do at least 2 a month, teach for 2 hours, and people love it. We have some real veterans who come and get to know each other a little bit and share stories and boast each other up. And it's good to really dip into this because ultimately it'll be fun and eye-opening, and it'll protect you from a lot of misinformation.
And the book is Toxic Superfoods, which I assume is available at all the places.
All of them.
All the places.
It's also available in 7 other languages beside English. So if you have friends and family who speak other languages, you might find it as well.
Wow. Wow. Phil, I don't know that we've had a guest in quite some time whose information felt so personally applicable to me. I mean, I've heard some cool stuff and some mind-blowing stuff and some things that have caused changes in my behavior, but this one just feels really timely. Whew. I hate spinach. Sally, thanks for being with us. This has been really good.
That's very generous, and thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it deeply, and I hope we can continue to help people discover better information.
Yeah. So the website is Sally K. Norton, all spelled exactly like you would expect, sallyknorton.com. The book is Toxic Superfoods. I know probably the next thing I'm going to do is go order it. And I guess
You can get it in an ebook. You can get it in an audiobook. It's my voice, though. And for learners who have trouble learning, you can read while hearing the audio going at a fast rate. So that helps to get it in all the ways, and it makes it easier.
Yep. Very good. This has been Stay Off My Operating Table with Dr. Philip Ovadia. Thanks for joining us, folks. We do cool stuff like this every single week. So this is the first time you've heard one of these things. Go ahead and subscribe. You'll dig it. It'll help you. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to y'all next time.
Chances are you wouldn't be listening to this podcast if you didn't need to change your life and get healthier. So take action right now. Book a call with Dr. Ovadia's team. One small step in the right direction is all it takes to get started. Contact us at ifixhearts.com/talk. That's ifixhearts.com/talk.